سلام خدمت دوستای گلم. بریم یه گیم دیگر داشته باشیم. خب چی برم؟ اسف. قبلا اسف میدر که میرفتم اتیکرش میکردم، اما الان انقدر تلنت های خوبی داره که واقعا حیفه اسپلش نکنی. اگه اجازه بدن من پیک آخرم بزنم خیلی خوب میشه. هیروامونو که همین الان بگم دوست ندارم. میرانا یه دونه ساپورت امیدوارم بزنم. راستم میگه، جلوی ما که باشم وایپر و آسکار میرن. الان این هیرو رو میزنم. یه تانگو به من فقیر کمک کنید. مرسی.
Welcome to our village.
حالا که اینقدر پسر خوبی بودی و تانگو هم بندازی. خب الان قراره برم جلوی هاسکا. پیک بعدی هم انیگما. کلا هیروهای عجیب غریبی زدم بچه ها. یکم روحیه بدم به بچه ها.
Thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan.
ویکیوی خوبه این بازی، اما نمیارم. میخوام بدون ویکیوی بازی کنم. باید حواسم خیلی جمع کنم که نگیرن منو. یه بار تو جیبش بود فکر کنم کاش. بیادم بینم واردت. دینایی میکنی من نظر نمیدونم.
That was my plan. Death rages. Agreed. You thought of that. Agreed. Die. You thought of that. Very well. That was my plan. I hunger. What is it now? Agreed. First blood rages. That was my plan.
روی کاغذ که هیروی اون از من سرتره، اما تو بازی فعلا دارم فشارش میدم.
plan. Very well. That was my plan. What, mortal? That? What is it now? I hunger.
Our allies' town needs help.
That was my plan. Thought of that?
تلاشتو دوست داشتم میرم.
Your soul is mine. I hunger. You thought of that? Agreed.
Our allies' town needs help.
Your soul is mine. That was my plan.
خب الان اینجوری ساده
Agreed.
اومدی بهش کیل بدی فقط.
That was my plan. I hunger. You thought of that? Death rages. I hunger. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. That was my plan. Die. I hunger.
اینم بالاخره موفق میشی یه رو بزنی بهش.
What is it now? That was my plan. Greetings. Very well. That was my plan.
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
I hunger. Die. Death rages. I hunger. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. What, mortal? Your soul is mine. You thought of that? I must hunger soon. Death rages. I hunger. That was
تو هوکت نخورده نه چه؟
You thought of that? Very well. I hunger. You thought of that?
Our allies' town
Yes,
needs
we
help.
این مجیک هم بگیرم برای روز مبادا.
Very well.
باز تو اومدی؟ خب مانا ندارم.
I hunger. Death rages. I hunger.
یکم اتکش بدیم الان.
Agreed. Very well.
خب بالاخره بعد از تلاش‌های ناموفق دوستان تونستیم بکشیمش.
You thought of that?
Our allies' town needs help.
That was my plan.
خب میتونم الان
That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Your
Our
soul is
allies'
mine.
town needs help.
Die. Agreed. Greetings. Very well. You thought of that? What is it now? Agreed. Very well.
Our allies' town needs help.
Agreed. Death rages. What, mortal?
یه پاوراپ خوشگل یه پاوراپ خوشگل
Was my plan. Very well.
دوست نداشتم.
That was my plan. Very well. What is it now? What, mortal? Agreed. You thought of that? Greetings. I must hunt soon. Very well. What? Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? Die. Agreed. You thought of that?
Our allies' town
hunger.
needs help.
Die. Agreed. Death rages.
بالاخره
That
دیدنش
was my
کرد.
plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. What, mortal? Greetings. Agreed. That was my plan. I
من لولم 8 اون 6. پایین چه خبره؟ جالب نیست زیاد این طرفم.
Our allies' town needs help.
Very well. What is it now? I must hunt soon. Agreed. Very well.
شانس نداریم هر طرف بریم یه طرف دیگه پاور آپ میدیم.
Greetings. That was my plan.
واسه لژیونه حتما یه لینکن هم میکنم.
Our allies' town needs help.
I hunger. Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. What, mortal? Greetings.
Our
Agreed.
allies' town needs help.
What, mortal? That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. What is it now? You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that?
منو بگیرن مردم. نیکولایت هم 6.
Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. Is my aid what, mortal? Greetings. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Death rages. I hunger. Agreed.
Our allies' town needs help.
Thought of that. That was my plan. Very well. What is it now? I must hunt soon. Greetings. That was my plan. What?
Our
mortal?
allies' town needs help.
Very well. Why? Agreed. Death rages. I must hunt soon. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Agreed.
Our allies' town needs help.
That was.
اوضاع خیلی خرابه. هم لاین پایین رو دارم.
What is it now? I must hunt soon. Fresh meat. Greetings. You thought of that?
Our allies' town needs help.
Death rages. Double kill. I hunger. Agreed. Thought of that. That was my plan. Kill double kill. Agreed. What is it now? Very well. That was my plan.
Our allies' town needs help.
Agreed. Very well. What, mortal? Agreed. Greetings. You thought of that? What, mortal? Very well. What is it now? Die. You thought of that? What, mortal? Agreed.
Our allies' town needs help.
What, mortal? Fresh meat. What is it now? That was my plan. What, mortal? Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. What is it now?
آخه
Agreed.
هی تلپورت نداره.
You thought of that. What, mortal? What is it now? That was my plan. Very well.
همشون ونگارد دارن.
Very well. One must hunt soon. That was my plan.
لیونه هم چه خفتش کنم یا میمیرم.
Greetings. Agreed.
بذارم سراغ لیژیون.
That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Your soul is mine. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? What, mortal? What is it now? Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Very well.
شیشش کنی مرده.
Our allies'
That
town
was
needs
my
help.
plan. Fresh meat. You thought of that? Dominating. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Killing spree. Agreed. Very well. Agreed. What? I must hunt soon.
اوف. یه ذره به بازی امیدوار شدم.
Our allies'
بریم یکم
town
فارم
needs
کنیم
help.
یه دگرم بیارم.
That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan.
خیلی بازی رو حرمی. نه بالا تاور داره نه پایین.
You thought of that?
اما اونا کری درست
Our
حسابی
allies'
ندارن.
town needs help.
That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Die. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed.
دگرم داره.
Very well. What is it now? You thought of that? I must hunt soon. I hunger. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? What is it now? What, mortal? Greetings. What, mortal? Very well. You thought of that? Rages. Die. That was my plan. What is it now? You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. I hunger. Very well. That was my plan. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Your soul is mine. That was my plan.
بمیر.
What, mortal?
گفتم شیش همون ندارم حیفه.
Agreed.
حتی میخواستم شیشم بدم نمیرسیدم
That
بهش.
was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed.
Our allies' town needs
انیگما
help.
هم شیش ندار.
Greeting.
با ماراش مرد.
That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that?
Our allies' town needs help.
Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Very well. Greetings. That was my plan.
Our allies' town needs help.
Agreed. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. I hunger. You thought of that? Fresh meat. Very well. I must hunt soon.
Our allies' town needs help.
ببینم چه خبر.
What is it now? Agreed. I must hunt
بگیر
soon.
نشانم.
That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Die.
آه. اینم لاغر بکشیم. خوب. اینم روشن رو زد. نیکولایت رادیانس بره یه ذره داستان میشه. یه بار باید بکشمش.
My plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. What? Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. Greetings. What is it now? I hunger. Rages. I must hunt soon. Very well.
اون روزی میرسه که من با انیگما یه شیش بزنم 5 نفر بمیرم.
That was my plan. Agreed. Greetings.
ماشاءالله بچه‌ها
What, mortal?
کم کم دارم به خودشون میام.
You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. What is it now?
نرو دیگه دگر بریم.
That was my plan. Very well.
برون بر برون بر برون بر.
That was my plan. Death rages. Agreed. I hunger. You thought of that?
یه لینکن هم بگیرم.
Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that?
اول گیم خیلی عقب بودیم، تازه من دارم یه ذره نفس میکشم، ولی بازم لول اپ هم خوبه. راضیم. یه لینکن هم بگیرم یه ذره خیالم راحت شه. لول های لژیون و نمیدونم شیش نیکولایت و هگزلون.
That was my plan. That was my plan.
بیکیوی هم بدش نیست این بازی، اما میخوام با خودم لج کنم بدون بیکیوی بازی کنم. دیگه باید حواسم جمع کنم پامو نگیرم.
That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Greetings. Agreed.
اوی نزدیک بود دربه بخوره.
Thought of that? Death rages. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Greetings. Agreed.
بریم این طرف مپ که لیون و لژیون بالا.
What is it now?
What is your wish?
نمیتونه اوکش کنه.
Thought of that? I hunger. That was my plan. What is it now? Very well. Dominating. That was my plan.
وای
You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? That was my
مردی
plan.
دیگه کاره چیه؟
Agreed. Greetings. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Death rages. That was my
Our
plan.
allies' town needs help.
You thought of that?
آقانیم داره لیون کردم دگیر میگیره.
Greetings. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. I hunger. Death rages. That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Death rages. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that?
I hunger.
Very well. Agreed. Must hunt soon.
What?
Mortal. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Trenches. You thought of that? Very well. You I must hunt soon. Agreed. You thought of that?
وقت اینه بپیچم.
Agreed.
تانک موردی داداش.
Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. Die. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that?
I hunger.
Agreed. That was my plan.
What?
Mortal. You thought of that? That was my plan.
Our allies' town needs help.
Very well. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? What is it now? Greetings. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Fresh meat. That was my plan. Agreed. Agreed. Thought of that? Your soul is mine. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Fresh meat. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Dominate. My plan. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Double kill. Agreed. Double kill. Very well. Death rages. That was my plan. Triple kill.
مارکاش خودشو لو داد.
Agreed. What? Mortal. That was my plan. Agreed. What is it now? I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well.
چقدر به من گیر
My
میده.
plan. You thought of that?
I hunger.
Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Death rages. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. What is it now? Very well. Must hunt soon. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. What is it now? Greetings. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. What is it now? Agreed. Greeting. What is what?
Our warriors have
That was
engaged
my
the
plan.
enemy.
You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan.
پیش نداری؟
Very well. You thought of that? That... You...
Where shall my blood
Greetings.
جای بدی اونا بار دارم و نداری.
You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed.
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
صبر کن خوشگله کجا؟
Very well.
بریم بعدی.
Thought of that?
اه. از اینجا تلپورت کردم اینجا.
Allies' town
فکر
needs
کردم میره رو یونیت.
That was my plan.
کجا رفت؟
Very well. Greetings.
این طرف.
Agreed. That was my plan.
واردشون هم اگه دوست دارین دیوارد کنیم.
Skirmishes. Agreed.
الان 25 میشم دیگه
Greetings.
اشغال شروع میشه.
Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed.
XP روشن رو بگیرم 25 شم.
Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that?
اینا از
That
این.
was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Greetings. Agreed. You thought of that? What, mortal?
باشه 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 باشه.
Agreed. That was my plan.
بیاد دیگه.
Agreed. You thought of that?
لاغل 6 بدم. یورسا وایستاده بود داشت نگاه میکرد. زودتر میومد من نمیمردم. خوشحالم که زده بودی دیگه ترس بود. اشکال نداره. گیم تمومه دیگه. کاش من برم داشتم. خب پنیر رو میدادم به اون. انیگما هم بد نداره. آقانیمش بیاد دیگه خودش تنها میتونه بزنه همه. ونگارد خلاصه نیکولایت. اول بازی خیلی جلو بودن ولی همین که کری ندارن، همین که این طرف میدو از من خورده بود. اگه اونم میدو از من میگرفت 3 تا لاینشون رو میزدن و راحت الان جمع شده بودیم. برم یه جا سولم جمع کنم. موقعی که من زنده هم نمیایم. الان میریم کنینم عاقبتش. عجب.
That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed.
I hunger.
Very well. That was my plan. Very well. You thought. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that?
Damn.
thought of that? Very well. I must hunt soon. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of
لول خیلی زیاد دارم. یه بیکیوی هم بگیرم بدش نیست.
greedy.
الان هم خوبه بیکیوی. تایمش بالاست.
That was my plan.
Double kill.
That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan.
دوباره موندم بچه ها.
That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed.
How may I
Greetings. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that?
Our allies' town needs help.
Very well. That was my plan.
killing spree is mine? Double kill.
That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that?
Our
لینکن رو
allies'
دادم
town
بهش.
needs help.
That was my
Our
plan.
warriors have engaged the enemy. Hello.
What is it now? You thought of that? You thought of that?
I hunger.
Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. I must hunt.
کجا رفت نیکرولیتر؟
Very well. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. Your soul is mine. You thought of that?
دیپ زد هیچیش نشد.
Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. What is it now? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? What? That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that?
کجا میدونی؟
That was my plan.
یه لینکن بدودم اگه کمر رفتی جلو.
That was my plan. Die. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan.
موقعی که من هستم فایت نمی کنم. من میرم.
What?
فایت دادنتون چیه؟
My plan. Agreed. Agreed. You thought of that?
آه. به بیکیوی نرسیدم. همشون هم دیسک بردن. بایبک کنم یعنی بیکیوی هم داره، نمیدونم چجوری یورسا لای دست و پا میمیره.
That was my plan. Very well. Agreed.
امیدوارم بالا خفتم نکنم.
Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan.
غلط کردم.
What, mortal? You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. I must hunt
چی
soon.
بگیرم؟ یه ادرنال هم بگیرم دمیج بیشتری بدم.
That was my plan. What?
بازی چقدر سخت شد، گره خورد.
That I must
اول گیم اونا جلو بودن، وسط شما جلو افتادن، الان هم که اوضاع اینه.
Greetings. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that?
Fresh meat.
Very well. That was my plan.
Double kill.
You thought of that?
نه نه جان منم، جان منم.
Plan.
باختیم که من ساده چرا رفتم، بای بکم ندارم، گفتم اینو گرفتم. 100 ثانیه دیگه میتونن راحت بیان کسلمونو بزنن، مگه این که معجزه شه. دیویست 44 تا پایینمون حالا تاور داره. کی میشه جان من بک کنی.
Our allies' town needs help.
بالا هم نگاه کنی. سخت شد که یه مانکی بیاره یوستا.
Our allies' town needs help.
Agreed. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. You
دو
thought of
طرف اومگاش
that was
در
my
یه
plan.
فایت.
I hunger.
Killing mortal. Death rages.
Our allies' town needs
I
help.
must hunt soon. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well.
بعدیش اینه همشون دیسک دارن، رو هر کی میخوای بری
Agreed.
هک نمیشه.
That was my plan.
Our allies' town needs help.
بایوک هم ندارم.
Agreed.
Where
یکم
shall my
هم
blood
بخرم.
be
You thought
spilled?
of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Die. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought
Our
of
allies'
that?
town needs help.
Agreed.
Fresh meat.
Death rages. Very well. What, mortal? Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that.
دیسک تو رو فعال کنم تو مثل سگ.
That was my plan.
Our allies' town
راه
needs
نمیره
help.
هیروین میفته دنبالم.
You thought of that. Very well.
مرسی شیش. عالی. بلایی ببرم ببینم حتی روشن چی گیرم میاد. کاش منم زنده میموندم تو این
Our
فایت.
allies' town needs help.
شیوا دیگه. شیوا تو بزن نتونه دگیر کنه میبک. روشن هم زدم. یوسه مریضی داشتیم. باختیم دیگه. سعی خودم کردم نشد. 14 5 19. شل نفس عمیق بفرمایید داخل. فکر کنید بیس خودتونه. تو این 60 ثانیه‌ای که من زنده میشم تمام دیگه. انیگما هم 6 نداره داره البته. رفرش زد. تا بگیر برو. گیوی بفر. ماشاءالله. ببینیم چیکار میکنیم. خب بسیار کم باش. بیا بزن. دو بزن دگیر کن بزنش. تو بیس
Our
دیگه چرا
allies'
فرق
town
میکنه.
needs help.
یوستا داداش تو باید بزنی.
Our allies'
گفتم
town
باختی.
needs help.
شل کردم. به شیشی داده میشه. فقط این که این آیتم نمیاره مشکل اینه.
The night beckons. I hunger. That was my plan. Greetings. What, mortal? You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? I must hunt soon. What is it now? That was my plan. Greetings. You thought of that? That was my plan. What, mortal? Agreed.
همینو که هم داشتیم. اینم دیسی شد.
Greetings.
یه جهان من یه همه زحمت کشیدیم حیف نشه.
You thought of that? That was my plan.
لینکن هم بفروشم. میگم لینکن سایکل هم بفروشم. به بش میخوام.
Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? I hunger. Your soul is mine.
وقت پاز دادن بابا.
I hunger. That was my plan. Very well. that?
بد کنید دیگه همشون.
Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Death rages. Agreed. Death rages. Very well.
Guide me. There's no time to rest.
I must hunt soon. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well.
خودم باید یک از اینایی که
Very well.
دیسک ندارن رو بگیرم تک کنم تا فایت شروع شه.
Thought of that?
بعدش هم انیگما
Very
بپره.
well. Agreed.
همه رفتم بالا.
Welcome to our village.
I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well. Die. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Death rages. That was my plan. You thought of that?
My life for the
Greetings. Very well. What is it? Agreed. I must hunt soon. Fresh meat. That was my plan.
double kill.
That was my plan.
تمام.
That was my... That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Greetings. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan.
انیگمای آخر بازی 2 تا شیشه خوب داد.
Very well. That was my plan.
راستم میگه 7500 تا HP داد.
What mortal?
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
Hunt soon. Very well. That was my plan. Death rages. Plan.
جی جی.
Agreed. What?
اینقدر گیم بالا پایین شد اصلا نمیدونستم میبریم یا میبازیم. گیم قشنگی شد واقعا. حال کردم. امیدوارم شما هم دوست داشته باش. مرسی بچه‌ها بابت حمایتاتون. اگه دوست داشتین بازم حمایت کنین. دمتون گرم. انگیزه میدین که ویدیوهای بیشتری بذارم. جی جی.